In this video, I'm going to discuss the latest application rate for SBF. Let's start with the total supply and demand first for all flat types combined. So as you can see, currently for the three big towns where it has many available units, for Queenstown, the demand is still lower than the supply. For Bukit Merah, it's almost catching up. So in total, there are over 800 units. And then the total applicants right now is already 634. But for Kalang Whampoa, now it's already oversubscribed because the amount of demand is already higher than the supply. In terms of very stark differences would be, for example, in Woodlands, as you can see, the amount of supply is only 100, but then there are over 1,000 people applying there. Same goes with Yishun. Yishun, as you can see, there are only 200 something units, but then the amount of applicants is close to 800. So these are the supply and demand status as of today. Now let's move on to talk about two-room flexi in particular. So this is the total supply and demand, but only for two-room flexi. As you can see, actually, there aren't much two-room flexi available. The most is available at Kalang Whampoa with 100 units. But then other than that, most of them are like lower than 40. After Kalang Whampoa, Yishun has 70. But you know, in the bigger scheme of all, it's actually not that much. But as you can see, the amount of applicants is already overwhelming. So for Kalang Whampoa, it's already 452, which is an increase versus yesterday when it was still, which is an increase compared to yesterday. And then Yishun is also very popular with close to 400 applicants applying there. Now let's talk about the two-room flexi application rate for seniors. So for seniors, currently the most sought after town is Tampines with 24.3. Now remember that seniors actually got a prioritized allocation for SBF as well as BTO. So the majority of the two-room flexi in SBF will be allocated for seniors, and then some of it will be allocated for first-timer families as well, and then the rest would be for single and second-timer families. But as you can see, Sengkang, Sembawang, Woodlands, basically many towns already reach double digits in terms of the application rate. Okay, next up, we have the two-room flexi application rate for singles. Now, the numbers are not good because as you can see, for all towns, the application rate for singles for BTO, for SBF, is already in the triple digit, with the highest at Tengah with 166. And then the lowest is Yishun, but then when I say lowest, it's still 102.5. So that is not a favorable number. So I've mentioned this many times before. If you are single and interested in two-room flexi, statistically, I think you have a bigger chance applying for a BTO versus SBF. But again, at the end of the day, it's your choice. Okay, the next one is two-room flexi application rate for first-timer families. So first-timer families oftentimes doesn't pick two-room flexi, hence that explains why the application rate is less than 1 for almost all town. So if you are interested to apply for two-room flexi as a first-timer families, you can pretty much like pick any town because the application rate is good. However, the only watch out is other than the three big towns that I've mentioned, Kalang Whampoa, Bukit Merah, and Queenstown, most of the units offered in other towns are a mix between older repurchase flats versus BTO. So that is something that you need to be careful with. And then the next one is two-room flexi application rate for second-timer families. So here we can see that for Jurong East and West, the rate is already at 10, for Kalang Whampoa 1.3, etc. Now let's move on to three-room, starting with the total supply and demand. So the majority of the demand is again in these three towns. Some of you ask like why got so many leftover units in these three towns. If I look at the history, like most of the big projects that ended up in this SBF and has a three-room flat allocation are a project with very strict restrictions like 10-year MOP, subsidy clawback, etc. And mostly were introduced around 2022. So maybe at that time, the concept of PLH is kind of new. So I think a lot of people hesitant to apply for a 3-room with such restrictions because, as you know, 3-room is like somewhere in between. It's not that big, but it's not that small either. But then in the bigger scheme of all, if you have MOP of 10 years, and then let's say there are additional children coming into the future, or you have, let's say, another family member that needs to live with you, the space is not adequate enough probably in the long run. I'm guessing that is one of the key reason why 3-room flats are not popular back then with such strict restrictions. I think nowadays people are more accustomed to the fact that, plus prime classification, it seems like it's here to stay. So it is what it is. But back then, you still have a lot of hesitation probably. Another thing that I've noticed is for new BTO, if it's under plus or prime, typically it would not have so many 3-room option. Like some projects doesn't even offer 3-room. They will just offer like 4-room and then 2-room flexi and then that's it. Because again, 3-room is like somewhere in between. Okay, next let's talk about the 3-room application rate for first-timer families. For Woodlands, currently it is the most popular with 6.2, and then the runner-up is Tengah with 3.5 and Punggol with 3.2. Now, interestingly, if you remember the previous chart that I've shown you, actually Queenstown has the most supply, but then the amount of applicants are still rounded down to 0. It's not exactly 0 lah, but it's rounded down to 0 because there's not many people applying. So if you are first-timer families and you have the budget, maybe you can consider Queenstown, Kalang Wampo, or Bukit Merah, because these 3 towns have quite a lot of supply, but then the application rate is still very low. Okay, next up we have the 3-room application rate for second-timer families. Currently, Bedok is already hitting 29 because of the limited supply, but then for other towns, for example for Queenstown, the application rate is still 0.9, so you still have a good chance. For Kalang Wampoa and Bukit Merah is already more than 3. Now let's talk about 4-room, starting with the total supply and demand. So similar with the previous chart, so these 3 towns, Punggol, Bukit Merah, and also Kalang Wampoa, have the biggest bulk in terms of supply, even for 4-room flats. In terms of the demand, for these 3 towns, the demand is still under the supply, so you have a good chance if you want to apply here. For other towns, for example, like Woodlands, the supply is only 36, but then there are over 350 people applying. And then for Yishun also similar situation. The supply is only 73, but there are 259 applicants. Bedok only have 42 supply, but then close to 200 applicants already. So if you feel lucky, of course, you can apply to any town, right? But then if you want to be strategic with your choice, I think it's wise to consider the number of available supply before you apply to any SBF flat type and town. The next part is about 4-room application rate for first-timer families. So as you can see, the application rate is still under 10. With Sengkang leading at 8.9, not necessarily because Sengkang is popular, but it's just because the amount of supply is very limited, but then there are quite a lot of applicants there. And then the second runner-up, the runner-up is Pasiris, and then second runner-up is Seranggun. Oh, okay. Next one, we have the 4-room application rate for second-timer families. This is where the numbers becomes tragic, because as you can see, for Woodlands, it already hits triple digit. Now the application rate is 148, meaning there are close to 150 applicants fighting for one flat in Woodlands. And then for Queenstown, Kalang Wampoa, and Bukit Merah, the application rate is still less than 9, so you might still have a chance there. Next up, let's talk about the bigger flats, which is 5-room, 3-gen, and also executive. In terms of the total supply and demand, in reality, as you can see, there's not many supply being offered in this year's SBF. The most is in Yishun with 53 flats, but then other than that, it's lower in terms of the amount. Again, Woodlands, very popular, close to 300 applicants already applying there. Tampines also very popular, close to 200. Also Sengkang. But then, looking at Sengkang, right, the supply is only 11. The applicants is close to 190 already, so yeah, the chances are not that good lah. Now, in terms of the application rate, for first-timer families, as you can see, for Sengkang is 6.3, and then the next one is Pasir Ris with 4.7. If you want to apply and you don't mind getting older flats, probably you can try Bukit Batok or Toa Payoh because the application rate is still less than 1. Next up, we have the application rate for second-timer families. This is also showing a triple-digit application rate for Woodlands and Tampines. It's already beyond 100 in terms of the application rate. For second-timer families, clearly the amount of allocation is very limited lah. This is why you see the numbers are like this. As usual, I'm showing you the screenshot of the actual HDB table itself, in case I made any mistake or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye. To support my work, you can give a one-time tip by pressing the thanks button, pick the amount that you want, and click buy and send. Or you can also press the join button for exclusive contents and monthly membership. Your support means a lot to keep us independent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye!